Good evening, everyone. My name is Kyla Ramdad, and I'm going to be talking to you today about my case study that I did, and it is a deeper look into Japanese foreign aid programs to Malaysia. And I apologize for my late video posting. Okay, so let me just go ahead and get started. Malaysia has been one of the top recipients of Japanese aid for a very long time. And Malaysia and Japan have enjoyed very good bilateral relations for several decades. They remain close diplomatic ties and they conduct active cultural exchange and have very strong economic relations. Because of Japan's strong economic standing, other Asian Pacific nations, particularly nations with who are still kind of developing, look to Japan for aid as opposed to relying on Western powers. The Japanese foreign aid policy mirrors a lot the Malaysian Look East policy, and that's referring to what I just mentioned, where Japan wants to contribute and look in partnerships with other Eastern countries as opposed to relying solely on the West. So there are several reasons for Japan's high aid donations to Malaysia. Some of these reasons include the fact that the country still faces some problems such as environmental deterioration and income discrepancies. Despite Malaysia's impressive economic development, they still have a lot of issues that exist. So this is the reason why they are still a high recipient of aid, particularly Japanese aid. Malaysia also had a financial crisis in 1997 and 1998, and that really messed up the country's economy. Although that was a long time ago, the country since recovered, but a lot of that has to do with the reason why they're receiving aid now and why the country has been behind in development compared to some of its counterparts. Malaysia is a middle income country and has made many leaps in economic development. It is less likely that projects funded by foreign aid will go unfinished, and this is in reference to the reading from that week, The Political Economy of Unfinished Development Projects. In that article, the author was talking about unfinished projects in Ghana and how it is so detrimental for the recipient who's receiving the aid and the donor. But unlike extremely developing countries like Ghana, Malaysia is middle income, and so it's less likely that aid projects that happen in Malaysia will go unfinished, so that makes it a much better candidate for aid. FDI, or foreign direct investment from Japan, has greatly benefited Malaysia and the Malaysian economy. Malaysia is an attractive investment destination for Japanese companies due to its good infrastructure and well-educated workforce. A majority of Japanese companies in Malaysia are in the manufacturing sector, while others are in service-related businesses. So some examples of Japanese companies that are in Malaysia are Sony, Hitachi, just to name a few. And they've been operating in Malaysia for more than 20 years, so they've been there for quite a while, and those companies have put out a significant investment into Malaysia. Another one of the readings that was assigned for that week was talking about how FDI is not more effective than aid, but it does highlight that FDI may contribute to human development. Aid to Malaysia, as in the case with any aid to any country, can cause dependency. It can also cause increased amounts of corruption and theft by government officials of aid monies. In the case of Japanese aid to Malaysia, many of Japan's aid initiatives and projects to Malaysia held Japan's best interests at heart. This sometimes meant a donation was good for Malaysia, but in the end, it highly benefited Japan. So an example of this is the New Maezawa Initiative, and that was an aid initiative to Malaysia from Japan to help Malaysia recover from the Asian financial crisis in 1997 and 1998. And that was the crisis I mentioned before. So a part of this initiative was that scholarships were given to Malaysian students to help them pursue their studies in Japanese universities. Funds distributed in the New Maezawa Initiative helped to ensure that this part of the Look East policy would not be discontinued. And so, as far as Japanese benefit, they were interested in attracting foreign students to Japan. Another example is an engineering training program that was implemented by Japan and Malaysia. So under the Malaysian-Japanese Universities Twin Program, Malaysian students were trained in Malaysia first, and then they were transferred to work in Japanese universities. And so this benefited Japan because it was very cost effective. Schools and universities are a lot cheaper in Malaysia than Japan, so students would train at a very low cost in Malaysia and then go and work in Japan, benefiting Japan, without Japan having to pay for their education in Japan. So it saved money and they got the skilled workers from it. So these two examples show how aid dependency and even acceptance of aid, especially when the majority is from one country, can cause hindrances for a country to globalize. These two examples show how Japan is looking out for its own best interest with its aid programs, but this does not always translate to looking out for the best interests of the recipient countries, especially in the context of globalization. So again, referring to the example I just mentioned, Malaysia is hindering itself from entering the globalized economy because of this aid program, because its workers are getting trained and they're going to work in Japan as opposed to working in Malaysia and help building up the Malaysian economy, or even working in other countries besides Malaysia or Japan. So everyone, that is my little presentation, and that was kind of a look into Japanese foreign aid programs in Malaysia. Again, I'm sorry for the delayed video. I had some personal issues that came up, but if you have any questions or concerns, or if you just want to make a comment, please go ahead and do so, and I will still answer that. Thanks, and have a good night.